Tonight, the defense is wrapping up their case, finishing with Alec's brother John Marvin taking the stand. Will his words resonate with the jury and help convince them Alec is a family man who is living through a horrific tragedy, losing his wife and son, and then being falsely accused of their murder? Or is it too little, too late? We are live from the courthouse with all the big moments as the trial the nation is watching gets closer to a final verdict.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard. We are live in Colleton County, South Carolina. Walterboro is the name of the city. The courthouse behind us, a warm breeze. We are here. We're locked down, folks. Until this jury gets the case and returns a verdict, we're not leaving town. We're going to stay here. So our coverage of this case, we've called the Murdaugh family murders. And the reason being, this is all about family. All about family. And the key to this case is understanding the dynamics in the family and what was happening in the family and whether or not the ultimate betrayal took place. Now, when you talk about the Murdaughs in this case, you're talking about two dead Murdaughs, Maggie and Paul. And it's extremely tragic, extremely tragic. Especially, we've heard the order of death, we believe, was Paul first and then Maggie. That's what prosecutors are arguing. That's what they say the evidence determines. So think about Maggie's last moment on earth, knowing that her son was shot and killed. Whether her husband is or is not the killer, that is a horrible way to end your life as a parent, knowing that your youngest son is dead. Now, for Paul Murdaugh, this was a point of his life. There was a lot of controversy going on. He was a criminal defendant himself. He was in a lot of trouble. There was a lot of things going on. But despite all of that, a young person should get to live their life. Just like Mallory Beach deserved to live her life, Paul Murdaugh did as well. And he's gone. So two dead Murdaughs. You've got one Murdaugh who's accused, and that's Alec. This is a father accused of murdering his own son and the mother of his two children. And this is, I mean, again, we get back to that name Murdaugh. This is a family that seemingly, from everything we've learned, looks out for one another, that takes care of one another. They clean up each other's messes. They don't create messes like this. But that's what he's accused of, right? You've got Maggie and Paul had his troubles, and we've heard evidence that Alec was doing everything he could to try to clear his son's name. Obviously, Maggie would be doing the same thing. But he's accused of murdering both of them. Now let's take it one step further here and what we've seen during the course of this trial. Because you've got Murdaughs as victims, Murdaugh as a defendant. So who are the Murdaughs supporting here? Who are they supporting? I think it's Murdaughs for the defense. Absolutely. Despite the fact that Paul and Maggie dead, many times, almost all the time, when you've got family members who are killed, you, as a family member, come to that courtroom, you sit behind the prosecutor, you support the prosecution, and you're hoping for justice. But that's not the case in this case. No way. They're there supporting Alec because they don't believe he's guilty. Or if they do believe he's guilty, they want him to get away with it. But from the testimony, everything we've seen and heard, it seems genuine that they don't believe he did it, or they don't want to believe that he did it. Not unusual for a family member to support a family member, but sometimes in cases where a family member is the victim, you see that happen. But not happening here. And here, as we get close to the end of the defense case, they call to the stand another Murdaugh, John Marvin, Alec's brother. Smart man, super bright, very sort of personable, like we've heard Alec described, but I think he's not as rough around the edges. Like Alec was, despite the fact that Alec's a lawyer, successful, all that, he's a little rougher around the edges. and the way he communicates. John Marvin, his brother, seems a little smoother. I mean, almost strikes me as more of a, I don't want to disparage him and call him a politician, but sort of as the way a politician can kind of make you feel very comfortable very quickly. And I've seen him do it inside the courtroom with different people, and came across as a very sincere witness today for the defense. Let's take a look.
Alec called me and just absolutely hysterical. As soon as I heard his voice, I knew something bad was going on. He was just broken, I mean, distraught. I mean, everybody was. There were a few other people there, but he just, all we did is hugged and cried. I mean, I don't even know that we talked. I saw blood, I saw brains, I saw pieces of skull. And when I say brains, it could just be tissue. I don't know what I was seeing. It was terrible. I can promise you, no mother or father or aunt or uncle should ever have to see and do what I did that day. I don't know, I'm not blaming anybody, but it's just, I was just overwhelmed. I did everything I could.
Powerful. That's powerful testimony. I mean, I'm looking at him, I'm listening to him, extremely emotional, but it comes across, and I believe was, very sincere. I mean, he was there and he saw his nephew's brains splattered everywhere. Now, regardless of who the killer is here, that moment is difficult. And that came across in the courtroom. But I think the defense wants to use that to try to say, listen, the Murdaughs are supporting the Murdaughs. This is a tough thing. An uncle is heartbroken. His father couldn't have done it. His father wouldn't have done it. I think that's where we are. Hey, I want to bring in Chanley Painter, Court TV legal correspondent. She's sitting next to me right here. Chanley, great to see you.
Great to see you, Vinny. Welcome back.
We're outside.
That's right.
You know, one of the reasons that we went to Fat Jack's, besides the great food and the great people, was also when I was first here, the weather was a little dicey. This is a nice, beautiful southern night. This is why people move here. It's why people live here. Absolutely beautiful. But let's talk about what happened inside that courtroom today with John Marvin.
Yes.
He talked about, how did he describe the relationship? Because again, this is about family to me, that relationship between father and son, Alec and Paul.
Absolutely, and family in the courtroom. This is a witness the jury has seen in the gallery this entire trial for weeks. John Marvin, as you said, this gregarious person who is affable. Like, you can watch him inside the courtroom.
He works the room. He works the room.
Sincerely genuine person, and he came across like that on the witness stand, Vinny. He captivated the entire courtroom. The jurors leaned in. He had moments of levity where they laughed with him, and then one seemed to grab a tissue and dab her eyes at moments when he became emotional, talking about Paul. John Marvin had a special relationship with his nephew, Paul. Paul worked for him at the time of his murder. And he also talked about the relationship his brother Alec had with Paul and Maggie. He became emotional during that as well. He talked about the moment that Alec called him hysterical after finding the bodies, allegedly. And again, with Paul, it was that moment where he really broke down on the stand. Let's watch.
How well did you know Paul?
I knew Paul very well. Excuse me, I'm gonna have a hard time talking about Paul because we had a very special relationship. But I knew him very well. And I'll do my best to answer any questions about him.
Well, did he have a nickname?
He did. They called him Little Rooster.
And did they call him anything else?
Well, I mean, he'd been called Little Rooster, had been called, as you heard, Paw Paw. I mean, that's what my family, my kids called him.
There's a lot of nicknames that we're learning in this testimony.
And Paw Paw, that's important
Paw Paw,
because that's what Alec was saying over and over again on the witness stand.
Exactly. So you could just feel the heaviness of his testimony, bringing Paul to life, Maggie, and humanizing Alec, another witness on the stand from the defense.
I think the more you make this feel like a real family,
right,
not characters, but like a real family, I think it's
In the
effective.
gallery, Benny, they were echoing that emotion. You know, they moved back a couple rows, but you have, you know, Lynn and Randy was there today with his wife, and they were all passing tissues throughout John Marvin's testimony.
Big moment for them. All right. He also testified about Maggie's phone.
Yes.
And this is one of those pieces of evidence I still don't understand. I don't know if anyone understands why that phone ended up where it ended up. But he had a big part in finding it.
He did, and this was interesting moment in the courtroom because you could sense his passion for what happened in this story when he had this, what he thought was a huge discovery. He found possibly a key piece of evidence, as we know, and he didn't feel like the law enforcement officers echoed that sense of urgency that he felt. Let's take a listen to that part.
I went to Buster, and sure enough, I said, Buster, do you have this one of these apps like they're talking about? And he said, yeah, sure I do. I said, well, open it up. He opened it up, and he handed me the phone, and I see Maggie's name, and I press it, where, you know, to activate it, and it pings Maggie's phone just out front of the property. And I was like, I hate to say it, but I said, holy there it is. And I said, Buster, I'm taking your phone. I'm gonna go back down to the shed and show it to law enforcement. I went up to a sled agent or two sled agents and said, presumably sled agents, and said, hey, I've got Buster's phone here, and it's got an app on it that can find the phone, and it's showing Maggie's phone's right out here. Y'all want to let's go get it. And he said, no need. We have technology coming later today that we should be able to find it. And it blew me away that I'm sitting here showing them where Maggie's phone is, but they won't take the time to walk with me or take this phone itself. I mean, I'd give them the phone to go find it.
So again, he was integral in finding Maggie's phone, Benny, but a lot of pieces of the investigation he was integral with. He was there when they searched Moselle. He was there if they ever needed anything. So it was interesting and smart, probably, choice that they culminated the defense case with him.
Yeah, and you talk about the sled agents and the relationship with the Murdaughs. They're trying to paint sled as the enemy here. They're the outsiders, the enemy, and that was a prime example. And I can see Harpootlian jumping on that in his closing argument, talking about the fact, well, they had a big piece of evidence, but they didn't want to hear anything from the Murdaughs because they were already focused on what they were focused on. Fascinating. Now, let's talk about the two-shooter theory, because that came up inside this courtroom again today. It's been a while since we heard it, but it could be a significant argument for the defense.
Oh, absolutely. Ever since opening statement, I mean, they've been putting this theory out there, and today they brought in an expert, a very experienced expert, to come in and talk about why he believed that it would make more sense that more than one shooter was involved in it. I thought it was pretty interesting. Let's listen.
With Paul, as I articulated, I believe he was shot first. I believe he had no idea it was coming, and he took the shot to the chest, and very soon thereafter, the one in the back of his head. Anybody in the near proximity to that, if Maggie had been anywhere in that area walking around down there, she would have heard that, and her response would have been in the direction of the shooter or the activity, or run, or do something different. So I think that the temporal location suggests that these things more probable than not happen fairly quickly, and that the individual who shot first with the shotgun minimally was stunned, probably blood and material in his eyes, and maybe have been injured, and would have taken some degree of time to recover. And lastly, I think there is just a more or less anybody who deals with firearms, a logical argument here. Why would one shooter bring two long rifles, two long weapons to the event? You can't handle and shoot two of them. So you either got to put one down, use one, and then swap out and grab the other one, or I suppose you could have one on a sling, but that's quite awkward, and it's slipping around and it's banging around in an environment we know is very, very tight.
All right, I get it. You wouldn't bring 2 guns there, but what if the 2 guns were already there and you grabbed one and then there was no ammo, and then you grabbed the other and then you finished the job on your second victim? I think that's what the prosecution would say, but what do I know? What do I know? I just host this show here on Court TV. Hey, by the way, someone who knows a lot about this now joins Chanley and me. Matt Harris, host of the Murdaugh Family Murders Impact of Influence podcast. Here we are. Yeah. I don't have any food for you tonight. We're not at Fat Jack's. Yeah, but thanks for coming. What'd you think of today? Like John Marvin on the stand.
John Marvin, no offense, attorneys, but one of the best things he did was say, I'm not an attorney. He separated himself from the Murdaugh family almost and became more of this guy does heavy machinery and he rents machinery. I thought that was really important because I think that it made him less of the...
No, just say it. It made him more credible because he's not a lawyer. That's what Matt is saying
I'm trying to say he's a lot less slimy.
So,
no, but I think it helps, with regular folk, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And it really resonated. And also, the story he was telling about the phone, he told us on the podcast 6 months ago, 8 months ago. It's been very consistent. And his ending was brilliant, too. That when they said to him about, are you really worried or concerned about your family name? And he said, well, I'd be no more concerned than, you would be at your name. And he looks at the jury and he's like, or y'all's names. It was, did you feel it, Chanley? That was like pretty important.
There were jurors who nodded back at that moment.
Right. So it was good.
Maybe he should be a lawyer. Maybe he should. But, I mean, he was so strong.
Yes.
So strong inside that courtroom. So ultimately, you look at this case, and I started off by saying the Murdaugh family murders. It's an unusual dynamic because the victims and the defendant are all in the same immediate family. And do you think the victims in this case have been played sympathetically to the jury? Like, to a certain extent, I kind of get it. I almost feel like Maggie's getting lost in the shuffle. Is it just me, or is Maggie getting lost in the shuffle in all of this?
That's interesting you say that because I felt that she's been lost in the shuffle from the get-go. When we started doing the podcast just a week or 2 after the murders, none of Maggie's family members have spoken publicly. There's not a lot of stories being told. We tried to get people to talk about Maggie and tell stories about Maggie, and they just weren't out there. And not sure. I understand why her family would want to keep things down low, but I agree. That's an interesting take because I agree with you.